computer memory is often called main memory or sometimes primary storage. It comes in different forms: random access memory or RAM, read-only memory or ROM, virtual memory, flash memory. The key thing to remember is that main memory can be directly accessed by the CPU. Random access memory. Software programs are stored long-term on the hard disk. However, the CPU cannot access a program directly from the hard disk. It needs to be loaded by the operating system into RAM. Once the program or data has been loaded into RAM, it can be accessed by the CPU. Why do we call it random access memory? Because the CPU can access any memory location at any time in any order. Because of this ability, programs held in RAM can run very quickly. RAM is measured in gigabytes. A typical personal computer will have around 4 gigabytes of RAM installed. People who run processing heavy applications may have up to 64 gigabits of RAM installed. RAM needs constant electrical power to work. If the power fails, i.e. the computer is switched off, even for a moment, then anything that was stored in the RAM will be lost. The term for this is volatile. So let's have a definition. Volatile memory loses its data once power to the memory chip is interrupted or lost. Virtual memory. As RAM fills to capacity, the operating system can temporarily mark sections of the hard disk to use as virtual memory. Virtual memory can be accessed by the CPU and so is classed as main memory, even though it's on the hard disk. So let's take a look at how virtual memory works. Remember, this is a very simplified version. You start up your computer and the BIOS loads the operating system into RAM. The operating system takes up this much space in RAM. You decide you want to look at the internet, so you double-click the web browser icon on your screen. The operating system loads the web browser into RAM. It takes up this much space. While you're catching up with your friends online, you decide you're going to listen to some music. You double-click the icon for your music app, and the operating system loads that into RAM. The music app takes up this much space. After a while, you realise that you really should start getting on with your homework. So you double-click on the word processing icon. The word processing software gets loaded into RAM. You can see by now that RAM is starting to get pretty full. There's a little bit of space left, but not much. But that's fine. The operating system and all the programs that you're working with fit in and they're able to be accessed by the CPU. But after a while, you need to edit an image and you double-click the icon for your graphics package. However, by now there isn't enough room for it to fit into RAM. So the operating system allocates space on the hard disk to act as virtual memory. It looks at the software that you have open in RAM and moves anything that the CPU isn't currently using into the virtual memory. This continues until there's enough space to open your graphics package in RAM. If RAM is very full, then the operating system will continually swap data and programs that aren't currently being used by the CPU back and forward between RAM and virtual memory. This causes the hard disk to be continually accessed, and you can often hear it working very hard. This is called disk thrashing. This constant swapping in and out of virtual memory and RAM causes the computer to run slowly. happens often, you may need to install some additional RAM to help improve performance. Like RAM, virtual memory is also volatile. Read-only memory, or ROM. ROM is called read-only memory because its contents cannot be changed or overwritten, unlike RAM. It is non-volatile. It keeps its data when there is no power supply. Until recently, ROM was always used to store the computer boot-up instructions, or BIOS. Nowadays, the BIOS tends to be stored in flash memory. ROM is still used to store the MAC address on the network card. When you switch your computer on, the BIOS checks the hardware is installed correctly, for example, memory, graphics cards, etc. It also checks the input-output devices, such as the keyboard. It then loads the operating system. So let's look at RAM versus ROM. RAM is read-write, ROM is read-only. RAM is volatile, ROM is non-volatile. RAM is used to hold data and instructions that are currently being used. ROM is used to hold basic computer hardware settings such as the BIOS permanently. RAM is measured in gigabytes, ROM is measured in megabytes. Flash memory. Flash memory is non-volatile memory. However, unlike ROM, which is also non-volatile, flash memory can be used to both read and write data into it. It's read-write. As mentioned earlier, nowadays flash memory is often used to store the BIOS. This is so that changes to the instructions can be made when needed. Flash memory has many advantages. Amongst them, it's extremely robust and it's also very quick to access. However, the disadvantages of flash memory are that it's more expensive than other types of memory. It also has a limit to the number of times that data can be written to it. After a certain number of write operations, it will stop working.